Hey, stop me if you've heard this before. When I was young, this before I realized that I'm best in short doses from safe distances, I used to date. I used to partner. I used to do all that stuff. I quit about 10 years ago, retired from it. Glad that my lack of appetite had finally caught up with my lack of aptitude. I'm a lot at close distances, as you might imagine. But back when I did, there was kind of a running joke in all of my partnerships. At first, we would engage in what Al Pacino describes in The Sea of Love, a movie from the 80s, as the wonder of me phase. We would regale each other with all of our repertoire, all of the things that we knew, all the stories from our lives, all the jokes we told. And at some point, we reached the outer limits of our repertoire. And like what happens at the end of the universe, they speculate at the outer edge of the universe is you get bent back in. And so you see this in couples. You know, there's a way in which the wife or the husband has heard the story before. And you even feel like it's getting kind of impersonal that the person you're partnered with doesn't even remember that they've told you this story before. So there's something about the infinite and the finite that I want to get to here. And I'm going to move to a completely different topic here to discuss it. There's a fundamental question that you could ask about reality. Some people think the most fundamental question is, why is there something instead of nothing? But I would propose a different question. Why is there something instead of everything? Why do things turn out the way they do, not every which way? Why is there not just everywhere, but every when? Why isn't it all happening at once? And in a way, we have a suggested explanation in the concept of the multiverse. You can dodge that question. You don't have to think about that question because there are multiple universes. Why is there something instead of everything? Well, there is everything because there's an entirely different universe in which everything is exactly the same as this, but my shirt happens to be brown instead of blue. That is, you can avoid a question through simply assuming an infinite quantity of something. And that would kind of appeal to us. When I would fall in love, it was like, this woman's got everything, and infinite everything, and she'll be infinitely fascinating to me. And likewise, she felt the same about me. I have a pretty expansive repertoire, but it's ultimately limited. I do loop back at the curve of my universe, and it takes maybe a year at the speed at which I talk for someone to have finally heard all I've got. And I worry about that a little bit with these videos. On the one hand, I think I'm generating new stuff. On the other hand, maybe I'm not. I love this Randy Newman song, I'm Dead, But I Don't Know It. And there's also another feature which I take into account, which is nobody hears anything the first time around. I always find something new in a movie I watch over again. And in a way, all of my work is about just reruns. It's almost Talmudic in that I'm working the same issues, the same questions, the same concepts over and over, and each time mining new stuff from it. But I want to talk about the feeling side of it, the sense of the infinite, and how that is getting us into trouble. And it has been getting us into trouble for a very long time. The infinitely good, the infinitely plentiful, the cornucopia idea. This has been my theme in the last week or so, because I think it's actually the biggest problem we're dealing with right now, is when we get in a bind, like the physicists do when they're trying to explain why there's something instead of everything, we can basically imagine the infinite like a multiverse solution to it. It's a relief to think that. Now, there may be multiverses. I don't know. We may live in a multiverse. It's a separate question from that. What's true and what feels good are different questions. There's plenty of stuff that feels good and is true. There's plenty of stuff that feels good and isn't true. There's plenty of stuff that feels bad that is true. There's plenty of stuff that feels bad that isn't true. So it's a separate question from the ontology or what there is, but I am certain that there is a human appetite for the infinite. When you think about reincarnation or heaven, the fact that everybody is drawn to those concepts, it makes perfect sense. It doesn't mean it's real. It just means that that's what a human would want. Because we're kind of in a bind here. My life is finite. I'll be dead soon. And that's a lot for a human to deal with. It just the recognition that the big question as I see it is, how do you throw all into life knowing you'll be thrown out? How do you invest knowing that you have to divest? And one of the standard moves that humans make in such a situation is that they imagine an ideal where they don't have to divest, where they won't be thrown out, where they'll get reincarnated, they'll be recycled, or they'll go to heaven or the next planet, something like that. That appetite is in us. It was in me when I dated. This sense that I was going to be granted everything. I actually think my dating life was where I played out my religious fantasies. The parallels between religion and romance or partnership, they're obvious. R&B music is gospel music with a change of pronouns. Monogamy, monotheism. Sex, prayer. I think that's what I did. I was mostly I've been an atheist most of my life. So where did I channel that? I channeled that into my romantic idealism in partnership. That's what I did. That's who I became for the longest time. And then I realized, no, that's actually not where I belong. It's not good to play out those romantic ideals in reality. It's dangerous. I don't want to do it to other people. So, my main point is that when the going gets tough, we tend to pull out wild cards that are also trump cards. And Trump is a good example of this. The wild card is anything goes. Anything goes. Anything I want goes. And it's perfectly safe. I see this in romance. I see it in politics. I see it in morality, where we talk about infinite love or infinite kindness. And we feel really good about that. We feel like we've had a revelation when we experience a sensation like there is boundless whatever we want. It's the same thing that children feel when they imagine Disneyland, Candyland, all of that stuff. It's a human appetite. And it mostly comes out when we're in a bind. So when you just zoom back from what's going on politically, forget the details. Forget the fucking lifestyle brands. It's not about that. It's a human thing. So we're in a bind these days. We're in increasing binds. Things are getting uncomfortable. There are trade-offs. What do we get? We get movements that are basically romantic epidemics. That is I think of Trumpism as a romantic epidemic. Romance to me is the dream of happily ever after that lives in all of us, that burns in all of us, and cannot be met by reality. We're dealing with all of these trade-offs, many of which we did not expect to be dealing with, and here we are stuck with them. And what are people doing? They are grabbing out of thin air fantasies of the infinite. It's a utopian, idealistic thing. And idealism is a perfect word for it. Idealism means in philosophy the pure idea, ideal love, ideal consciousness, ideal whatever. And it's also feels ideal to us. So we kind of associate it with it. We bond with it. And as a result, there's actually some parallels to be drawn between what tends to happen after the honeymoon period in partnership and what tends to happen in all of philosophy, all of our thoughts. We imagine these wildcard infinites, these ideals, as a way to save ourselves the trouble of having to deal with trade-offs. So there's a connection I'm proposing here. I'll probably propose it again. Stop me if you've heard it, or at least stop the video and go watch something else. But what I'm suggesting is, Watch out for that. It's what I'm calling this week the cornea can't copia. That is, if we can't cope with the trade-offs we're stuck with, there's an easy way out. Our easy, obvious go-to solution is to imagine an infinite and claim that we somehow represent that infinite and that we don't have to deal with trade-offs. In partnership, after the honeymoon period, you get into the hard work of trade-offs, the give and take. Give and take, or checks in balance. It's very hard to maintain. It's very costly. It takes a lot of effort to even try to keep the effort in balance between, let's say, two people in a partnership. And I'm suggesting we think we've got an alternative to that, and that alternative is basically a wildcard trump card move. Infinite possibilities, infinite good is available to us. It's the romantic ideal. That I could have everything I want. It's a win-win. Everything's a win-win. We can all win. Why don't we all win? And because I am a champion of that belief that we should all win because there's infinite love or infinite kindness, then I win. And it becomes a real problem. That's exactly what Trumpism is doing, which is because they want everybody to have everything, they get to bully everybody who doesn't side with them. Kind of pathetic, and yet I think it's perfectly natural. It's exactly what you'd get out of human beings. It's like if you had a partnership that at first started out feeling really good because you're both going to give each other everything, and little by little you realize that your partner was a narcissist who demands everything from you because they claim to be the paragons of virtue. Oy.